Chapter 1. The Last Light of Orus, 7. The sky above Orus, 7 was a bruised canvas of burning red and smoldering ash, an ominous twilight that seemed to hold the planet in its final grasp before slipping into eternal darkness. A relentless wind swept through the skeletal remains of towering structures that once housed millions, now reduced to shattered steel and crumbling concrete, their sharp edges silhouetted against the dying light like the bones of some ancient beast long extinct. The acrid smell of smoke and scorched earth filled the air, mingling with a faint metallic tang that clung to everything, a reminder of the countless explosions, the furious firefights, and the endless march of death that had left this world gasping for breath. Amidst the ruins, a lone figure moved with unwavering resolve. Commander Elara Voss, the last living member of the legendary Vanguard Squadron, and the final hope for what remained of humanity's desperate stand on this forsaken world. Elara's boots crushed the cracked ground beneath her, each step a solemn echo in the deafening silence that followed the evacuation of the civilian population and the retreat of the last Allied forces. Her armor, once gleaming and pristine, now bore the scars of countless battles, scorch marks, dents from heavy plasma fire, and streaks of dried blood that stubbornly refused to wash away. She was a warrior forged in the furnace of war, hardened by loss, and driven by a duty that transcended fear or fatigue. Her visor reflected the dying sun, casting a faint orange glow that danced across the surface of her helmet like flames licking at a dying fire. The comms were dead, the transmissions lost in the chaos, but her mind replayed every last message, every frantic call for reinforcements that never came. The weight of solitude pressed down on her, heavier than the battle-worn armor encasing her body. Her gaze fell to the small, worn locket hanging from a chain around her neck, nestled close to her heart beneath the protective plates. It was the only thing she carried from Rin, her closest friend, brother-in-arms, the voice of hope in the darkest nights. His face haunted her thoughts, bright eyes full of reckless courage, a grin that never faltered even when the odds turned against them, and the promise he whispered before the final assault on the orbital defense array. "We'll see the stars again, Elara. Just hold on." But he was gone, lost in the final hours of the battle when the Hive's dread swarm breached the station's hull and turned the place into a blazing tomb. Elara had heard his last transmission, desperate and fading, before silence claimed him. Now she carried his memory like a beacon in the gloom, a flame that refused to be extinguished. The landscape before her was a graveyard of broken machines and shattered dreams. Craters pockmarked the surface like the scars of some cosmic wound, each one a testament to the relentless bombardment from the Hive's dreadships orbiting high above. Their grotesque silhouettes blotting out the stars, the alien vessels hovered like vultures, their biomechanical hulls pulsating with a sinister glow that illuminated the battlefield in sickly shades of green and violet. The Zithari Hive was a force unlike any humanity had faced before, a nightmarish swarm of organic and synthetic horrors, creatures evolved to consume and conquer without mercy or reason. Their invasion had been swift and brutal, overwhelming entire worlds with terrifying efficiency. Orus, 7 had been humanity's last bastion in this sector, a planet rich in resources and strategic importance, but it now teetered on the brink of annihilation. Elara's comm unit crackled faintly, a ghost of static amidst the silence, and then, unexpectedly, a voice broke through the noise. It was faint, barely more than a whisper, but unmistakably familiar. Her heart stuttered, caught in the grip of disbelief and hope. "Elara, you forgot one more soldier." The voice was Rin's, impossibly clear, carrying the weight of memories and unspoken promises. She staggered, clutching her helmet with trembling hands as the words echoed in her mind. Was it a hallucination born of exhaustion? A trick of the dying electronics? Or something more, a spectral reminder that she was not truly alone? She fell to one knee amidst the rubble, the ground cold and unforgiving beneath her. Her breath came in ragged gasps as the flood of emotions crashed over her: grief, guilt, anger, and the faintest spark of renewed purpose. The battlefield was not yet finished with her, and neither was Rin. Somewhere, somehow, beyond the veil of death and despair, His spirit had reached out to remind her that the fight was not over. There was one last chance, one final stand to be made, and she was not to face it in solitude. The dead were rising, not in body, but in memory and will, to stand beside the living. And Elara Voss was the spearhead of humanity's last desperate strike. She rose slowly, every movement a testament to her iron will. Her mind sharpened with clarity, the heavy fog of loss lifting as the echo of Rin's voice became a battle cry. She would walk into the heart of the Hive alone if she had to, but she would carry with her the strength of those who had fallen, their courage and sacrifice woven into the very fabric of her being. The planet's last sun dipped below the horizon, casting Oris, 7 into an abyss of darkness, but Elara's resolve burned brighter than any star. Her final battle was about to begin, and the universe would remember the name of the soldier who refused to die without a fight. The echo of Rin's voice resonated in the deepest chambers of Elara's soul, a spectral hand gripping hers through the darkness. She forced herself to stand, shoulders squared beneath the weight of loss and responsibility, every nerve screaming in protest, but her heart steady, forged in unyielding steel. The desolate landscape stretched before her, a savage expanse of shattered towers, burned-out tanks, and the twisted remains of war machines once piloted by her comrades. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Hive's alien ships still loomed, casting their unnatural glow against the starless void. She knew what awaited her beyond the ridge, the vast Hive nest, a writhing sprawl of organic and mechanical horror that had spread like a cancer across the northern continent, devouring all in its path. The last signal from the planetary defense grid had warned of a massive Hive brood mother emerging from the depths, a monstrous queen whose death would cripple the enemy's advance. That mission was now hers alone. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her plasma rifle, the familiar hum of the weapon a cold comfort amidst the suffocating silence. Every step toward the Hive's lair was a march toward oblivion, but Elara moved forward with a grim determination. She was no longer fighting for survival, she was fighting for the memory of those who could not stand with her, for the flickering hope that humanity's light might yet survive the encroaching darkness. As the cold wind whispered through the ruins, carrying with it the faint scent of burnt ozone and alien decay, she felt the unmistakable presence of her fallen friend. Rin's voice was no longer just a memory. It was a lifeline, an unbreakable bond that transcended death itself. The battle ahead was hers to fight, but she was not truly alone. Somewhere within the shadows, another soldier waited, a ghost of war ready to rise. Chapter 2: The Whispering Shadows. The world beyond the ridge was unrecognizable, a nightmarish landscape where twisted metal merged with living flesh, and the very ground pulsed with a sickly, bioluminescent glow. The Hive nest sprawled like a grotesque cathedral of death, its towering spires made of bone and wires, throbbing with an eerie rhythm that felt almost alive. As Elara approached, every instinct screamed for caution, but her mind was locked on the mission. The death of the brood mother meant crippling the Hive's ability to spawn new horrors, buying precious time for the scattered remnants of humanity to regroup and strike back. The air was thick with a nauseating blend of pheromones and corrosive chemicals, and distant echoes of alien shrieks echoed through the cavernous passages carved into the nest. Elara slipped silently through the organic corridors, her armor sensors struggling to filter the chaotic signals of Hive creatures lurking just beyond the edges of perception. Her footsteps were muted by the soft, pulsing floor, which seemed to throb in time with the alien queen's heartbeat. The familiar weight of loneliness settled upon her again, but it was fractured by the sudden clarity of Rin's voice, clearer now, more insistent. "You forgot one more soldier," he whispered again, this time with the faintest edge of a command. Elara's heart quickened, and she allowed herself a brief flicker of disbelief before steel replaced doubt. That voice was a call to arms, not a phantom's lament. Suddenly, a surge of kinetic energy rippled through the air, and a shadow flickered in her peripheral vision. Elara spun, plasma rifle raised, ready for the inevitable attack. But the figure that emerged was not one of the grotesque Hive horrors, but something else entirely, a ghostly silhouette, faintly glowing, shimmering like a hologram caught between dimensions. It was Rin, or rather, what remained of him, a fragment of his consciousness preserved in the residual data of the ancient neural implants they had once shared during training. The Hive's experimental technology, twisted and corrupted, had inadvertently preserved his mind as a digital specter, bound to this battlefield long after his body had perished. "You're not alone, Elara," the ghostly Rin said, his voice steady and sure. "I'm here. We fight together." Elara's breath caught in her throat, a mixture of sorrow and renewed hope flooding her veins. The final battle was no longer a solitary march into oblivion. With Rin's digital spirit beside her, a soldier reborn from the dead, she was ready to face the Hive's queen, to end the nightmare once and for all. Elara's eyes narrowed behind the cracked visor as she studied the shimmering apparition before her, the digital ghost of Rin, flickering with the faint blue glow of ancient tech that defied time and death. Her heart thundered with a chaotic storm of emotions, grief, disbelief, and an overwhelming surge of hope that surged through her veins like liquid fire. "Rin?" she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The ghost nodded, a solemn smile tugging at the corners of his spectral mouth. "I'm here." In every line of code, every memory fragment this cursed place failed to erase. They thought they could kill us, but they made a mistake. We live on not just in the flesh, but in the machine. For a moment, Elara allowed herself the impossible, the feeling of companionship in a place where only death had reigned. The Hive's oppressive aura seemed to waver, as if sensing the presence of an unexpected force rising in defiance. Rin's digital form extended a hand, fingers glimmering with intricate circuits and lines of data streaming across his translucent skin. "I can interface with the Hive systems. They use technology dark, twisted tech to bind their broodmother's essence to the nest's neural core. If we disrupt that link, we sever her control, and the swarm loses its heart." Elara swallowed hard, steeling herself against the revulsion that threatened to choke her. The Hive's technology was a grotesque blend of bioengineering and cybernetic horrors, the kind that had turned many of her squad mates into monstrous shadows of their former selves before death mercifully claimed them. Yet here was Rin, reborn through that very same technology, his spirit coded into a digital revenant, a weapon forged from their enemy's own darkness. The paradox was almost too much to bear, but she knew that desperation bred miracles. "Then let's end this nightmare," Elara said, gripping her plasma rifle with renewed purpose. The ghostly soldier nodded and began to fade, his voice echoing like a whisper in her mind. "Follow me. I'll guide you through the Hive's neural pathways." Elara moved cautiously, the flickering blue light of Rin's form guiding her through the labyrinthine corridors of living metal and flesh. The walls pulsed, veins of bioorganic circuitry glowing with toxic light as grotesque Hive sentries skittered silently in the shadows, their many eyes reflecting her visor's glow with predatory hunger. She dodged between spines and tendrils, following the digital trail left by Rin's spectral presence as he hacked into the Hive's neurological network. Every step brought her deeper into the nest's dark heart, a place where the queen's essence throbbed like a malignant pulse, controlling thousands of monstrous offspring with a single thought. The air grew heavier, saturated with the Hive's chemical pheromones and a low hum that vibrated through Elara's bones, syncing with the ghost's soft guidance. "Almost there," Rin whispered, his form flickering as he pushed deeper into the corrupted data streams. The broodmother's neural core lies beneath the central spire. Disrupt it, and the Hive collapses. But beware, the queen is protected by a swarm of elite guards. They won't let you pass easily. Elara's breath caught in her throat as distant screeches filled the air, followed by the ominous clatter of claws against the nest's living walls. The final defense was awakening, and the last chapter of this war was about to be written in blood and fire. Yet, she felt a strange calm, a certainty born of the dead friend at her side, the soldier who refused to be forgotten. The path ahead was perilous, the odds stacked against her in impossible numbers, but Elara was ready to face them. With Rin's voice in her mind and her own steel resolve in her grip, she stepped forward into the heart of the Hive, alone no longer, but the spearhead of a final, desperate strike that would decide the fate of Oris, 7, and the future of humanity itself. The screeches grew louder, a cacophony of alien rage that echoed through the living walls, and the shadows twisted as grotesque forms erupted from hidden crevices. Elara raised her plasma rifle, the barrel glowing with lethal blue energy as she squeezed the trigger, sending searing blasts into the advancing Hive elite guards. Their exoskeletons cracked and splintered under the assault, but they came faster swarms of claws, mandibles, and bioluminescent eyes glowing with malice. She moved with practiced precision, every shot a calculated strike, every dodge a dance with death. Yet the creatures seemed endless, relentless, driven by a singular will to stop her from reaching the broodmother's core. "Stay close," Rin's voice whispered inside her helmet, guiding her through the tangled labyrinth of biocircuitry and organic spines. The digital ghost flickered beside her, sending pulses of code that disrupted the Hive's sensors and caused momentary glitches in the enemy's coordination. It was a battle of flesh and data. Elara's raw grit against the Hive's terrifying evolution, and for the first time since the war began, she felt the tide shift. The guards faltered, confusion rippling through the swarm like a virus, opening a narrow path forward. The central spire rose before them like a cathedral forged from bones and wires, pulsing with an unholy light that throbbed in sync with the Queen's dying heartbeat. Elara could feel the weight of the Hive's consciousness pressing down on her, a cold, suffocating presence that sought to crush her will. Yet Rin's digital form steadied beside her, a silent sentinel carved from memory and code. "This is it," he said, voice firm and unwavering. "Plant the disruptor here." He pointed to a crystalline node nestled in the living core of the spire, a radiant knot of bioenergetic filaments that pulsed with raw power. Elara slid forward, placing the small device with trembling hands. The disruptor hummed to life, its circuits glowing brighter as it interfaced with the Hive's neural network. The spire convulsed, tendrils of organic matter writhing and splintering as the Queen's control began to unravel. The Hive screamed an unearthly howl of rage and agony that shook the very ground beneath her feet. But before victory could be claimed, a shadow fell over Elara, the broodmother herself, a towering behemoth of pulsating flesh and armored plates, eyes burning with ancient malice. Chapter 3: The Queen's Wrath. The broodmother loomed over Elara like a living mountain, her grotesque form blotting out the sickly light of the spire. Every step she took sent tremors through the ground, every breath a toxic storm that threatened to choke the life from the air. Elara's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve did not waver. She raised her plasma rifle, fingers steady despite the crushing weight of inevitability. Rin's voice echoed beside her, a constant beacon in the storm. "You're stronger than you know. We end this here." With a roar that shattered the silence, the broodmother lunged, a flurry of claws and venomous tendrils aimed to rend and consume. Elara dodged, firing precise blasts that seared through thick carapace and oozing tissue. The battle was a deadly ballet of survival, every moment a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. But with each strike of the disruptor, the Queen's power waned, her monstrous form flickering with spasms of pain and rage. The Hive trembled, the endless swarm faltering as their Queen's death throes echoed through the nest. Elara pressed forward, the memory of Rin's voice a steady drumbeat in her mind, pushing her beyond exhaustion, beyond fear. The final blow was near, but the cost would be high. This battle would be written in blood, fire, and sacrifice. The monstrous broodmother crashed down in a shower of shattered spines and pulsating tendrils, her guttural roar reverberating through the cavernous spire like an earthquake made flesh. Elara's body screamed in protest against the relentless assault, the crushing weight of the Queen's limbs, the corrosive venom dripping from jagged fangs, and the acrid stench of decay, filling her lungs despite the filtered air of her helmet. Each moment was a battle against oblivion itself, a desperate fight to carve a path through impossible odds. Yet beneath the pain, beneath the burning fatigue, Elara found strength in the memory that danced at the edge of her consciousness, Rin's unwavering presence, a ghostly echo guiding her blade and bolstering her spirit. Her plasma rifle discharged again and again, blue arcs of searing energy ripping through armored plates and burning through organic sinew with surgical precision. The disruptor pulsed fiercely on the crystalline node, sending waves of corrupting energy racing through the Hive's neural network. The broodmother staggered, a deep, agonized howl escaping her mandibles as her control began to fracture. The hive's endless throng faltered, their monstrous forms scattering in confusion and terror as their queen's death grip slipped away. Elara saw her chance a fleeting, razor-thin window of opportunity that would determine the fate of worlds. With every ounce of her remaining strength, Elara surged forward, dodging a fatal swipe and plunging a high-frequency blade deep into the queen's exposed neural cluster. The broodmother's scream was deafening, a sound so raw and primal it seemed to shake the very foundations of the planet. The queen's immense form convulsed, tendrils twisting and writhing as the disruptor's corruption spread like wildfire, severing the hive's control link with brutal efficiency. The monstrous spire began to collapse, organic structures splintering and rupturing in a violent cascade that shook the ground beneath Elara's feet. But victory came at a price. The queen's final, desperate attack caught Elara off guard, a torrent of venomous acid and crushing claws that threw her violently against the jagged walls. Pain exploded through her body as armor shattered and bones cracked, the world tilting on the edge of darkness. Her vision blurred, breath shallow and ragged, and yet the ghostly presence of Rin's voice pierced the haze. "Hold on, Elara. You're not alone." Summoning every shred of willpower, Elara forced herself up, every movement a battle against the tide of oblivion. She staggered toward the crumbling spire as it collapsed into a cataclysmic explosion of light and sound, the hive's heart finally silenced. The swarm's screams faded into agonized whimpers, then silence. The nightmare was over. As dust settled and the first rays of dawn pierced the toxic clouds, Elara sank to her knees amidst the wreckage, wounded, broken, but alive. The spectral figure of Rin appeared one last time, his face etched with pride and sorrow. "You did it. You carried us all." Tears welled in Elara's eyes as she whispered, "I walked alone, but I was never truly alone." The battle was won, but the scars ran deep. Humanity's last soldier stood amid the ruins, a testament to sacrifice, friendship, and the unbreakable bond that even death could not sever. Elara's battered form pressed forward through the crumbling spire as tendrils of the dying hive writhed in agonized spasms around her. The venom burning her skin was now a distant ache compared to the searing pain of loss and exhaustion that clawed at her soul. Yet each agonizing step was fueled by something far greater than herself. The memories of fallen comrades, the ghostly whisper of Rin's unwavering support, and the unyielding promise that the fight was not over until the last breath was drawn. The final strike was a reckoning. With one last surge of desperate strength, she drove her blade deep into the queen's core, igniting the disruptor's full power. The queen's monstrous roar fractured into 1,000 splintered screams as her colossal body convulsed, the neural links severed, and the hive's heart shattered. The living cathedral of bones and wires began to collapse, crashing around Elara in a deafening storm of debris and death. She shielded her face, grit grinding her teeth, the sound of the hive's destruction like a bittersweet symphony ringing through the hollowed ruins. As the dust settled, silence fell, thick, heavy, and absolute. The swarm's dark presence dissolved into echoes, and the alien landscape was finally still. Elara sank to her knees, the weight of victory pressing down harder than the rubble. Her armor was cracked, her body broken, but the flame of hope still flickered in her eyes. Then, amidst the settling dust, the glowing figure of Rin appeared, more vivid now than ever, his spectral form radiant with pride and warmth. "You carried us through," he said softly, reaching out a hand that shimmered like the last light of a dying star. "You fought when no one else could. You are the last soldier, but not alone." Elara's breath hitched, tears slipping down her cheeks behind the cracked visor. "I walked into the storm alone," she whispered, voice choked with emotion. "But you were with me. Always." Rin smiled, a bittersweet expression that carried the weight of countless battles and the promise of peace. "We are never truly gone. Not while someone remembers." With those final words, his form slowly dissolved into the ether, leaving Elara alone in the quiet aftermath, a lone survivor of a war that had nearly consumed everything. But she was not broken. She was not defeated. She was a symbol, the last soldier standing against the darkness. Chapter 4. The dawn of a new era. The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon of Oris 7, casting pale light across the ravaged battlefield and illuminating the twisted ruins with a fragile glow. Elara sat atop a shattered pillar, gazing out at the horizon where the alien dreadships once ruled the skies, now retreating in defeat. The war was over for now. The Hive's nightmare had been shattered, but the scars etched into the planet's surface, and her own soul ran deep. Yet amidst the ruins, a new hope began to rise. Communications crackled softly through her repaired comm link, the voice of allied forces breaking through the static. "Commander Voss, we have eyes on your position. Reinforcements are inbound. Oris 7 is not lost." Elara allowed herself a rare, weary smile, the weight of solitude finally lifting from her shoulders. She was no longer the last soldier. The war had forged something unbreakable in the hearts of those who survived. Rin's voice lingered in her mind like a blessing as she prepared to stand and lead the rebuilding. The battle had been brutal, the cost immeasurable, but the future was still hers to fight for. With the dawn came the promise of redemption, renewal, and a galaxy forever changed by the courage of one soldier who refused to walk alone. Elara rose, her silhouette strong against the rising sun, the ghost of a friend forever at her side, a reminder that no one truly fights alone when they carry the hearts of those who believe in them. Elara stood slowly, the weight of her battered armor a familiar burden, yet somehow lighter now with the promise of dawn and the sound of voices reaching out across the void. The acrid smell of smoke still lingered in the air, and the scars of war marked every inch of the shattered cityscape. But beneath the ruin was the unmistakable pulse of life, fragile, tentative, yet fiercely determined to endure. As the first Allied dropships descended through the reddening sky, their engines cutting through the thick haze of dust and ash, Elara felt a surge of something she hadn't dared to hope for in a long time: relief. The soldiers who emerged were weary and worn, their faces etched with hardship, but their eyes sparked with the same stubborn fire she carried within herself. The future was uncertain, the road ahead steeped in challenge. Yet the galaxy had been reminded of humanity's resilience and the unyielding spirit of those who fight when all seems lost. The war was not truly over, but a turning point had been reached, a battle won not just by weapons, but by courage and the invisible threads of loyalty that bind souls together beyond the veil of death. Elara's comm crackled again, a voice clear and steady. "Commander, you've done the impossible. The Council will want to hear your report. Your squad mates live on through you, and their sacrifice will not be forgotten." She allowed herself a small nod, clutching the locket around her neck, the last tangible connection to Rin. His voice, though silent now, was etched forever in her heart, a guiding light in the darkest nights. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, bathing Oris 7 in golden light, Elara began to walk forward toward the waiting ships, toward the promise of rebuilding, toward a future forged in the ashes of the past. She was no longer the last soldier, but the first of a new generation shaped by sacrifice and bound by unbreakable bonds. In the quiet moments before she left the battlefield behind, she whispered a vow carried on the wind: "We will rise together." The galaxy watched in silence, knowing that where one soldier stood unbroken, hope remained eternal. And though her friend's voice had been a whisper from beyond, it had echoed louder than any cannon fire, reminding her and all who would listen that no one truly fights alone. Elara's boots crunched softly on the shattered ground as she made her way toward the waiting dropships. The weight of the battle still lingered in her bones, the scars of wounds both seen and unseen, but, with every step, the oppressive silence that had surrounded her for so long began to dissolve. The faint hum of engines and the voices of comrades rising in the distance reminded her that life was still here, stubborn and unyielding. The horrors of the Hive had nearly consumed Oris 7, but humanity's spirit had burned brighter, refusing to be snuffed out. She paused for a moment, gazing out across the smoldering ruins bathed in the golden light of dawn. Somewhere beneath the rubble, remnants of her fallen squad lay silent, their sacrifices etched into the very fabric of this world. Yet, through loss and despair, she had found something impossible, a connection that transcended death. Rin's voice, once a fragile whisper, had become a guiding flame that led her through the darkness. She touched the locket at her neck and whispered into the rising wind, "Thank you, old friend, for reminding me I was never alone." The dropship doors opened, and she was greeted by faces worn with fatigue but alight with hope. The long nightmare was ending, and a new chapter was beginning. Reinforcements, medics, and engineers began their work immediately, determined to heal the scars of war and reclaim Oris 7's shattered future. As the ship lifted off, carrying Elara away from the battlefield for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she looked back at the planet below, scarred but breathing. The war had changed everything, but it had also forged unbreakable bonds and awakened a strength deeper than any weapon. Her final battle was over, but her journey was just beginning. With the voice of a dead friend echoing forever in her heart, Elara Voss stepped into the dawn of a new era, not just as a lone soldier, but as a symbol of hope, courage, and the enduring power of friendship that death could never claim.